Hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm Vinny Costa, editor of Street Muscle Magazine, and your host of the RodCAST, the all-encompassing car show where we talk about all things automotive. Today, I'm joined by my co-host, Greg Acosta, editor of Engine Labs and all-around tech guru. What's up, my man?
How you doing?
I'm good, dude. How are you?
Not bad at all.
Dude, we're recording this later in the day, and I've noticed immediately that you are less jovial than in the early part of the day.
I can't say that. I mean, I don't know. I've had more coffee than normal.
You're crashing because I'm like, how are you, Greg? And you're, what's up?
No, I don't feel down. Like I certainly feel maybe I'm trying a little too hard to fight the shakes.
Well, I'm glad you're feeling good, man, because today is a special episode. We have someone from in-house, and Greg, I'm going to adjust my microphone because I didn't do that at the beginning of the episode.
Okay.
How's that sound? A lot better?
There it is. Yeah.
There we go. All right.
Spend all that money on a mic not to use it.
Yeah, but today we have a very special guest. Like I said, he's in-house. He's someone you know very well, but our audience might not. He's one of our own. He's done your job. He's done my job. His career spans numerous titles and positions, and he's now the leader of our editorial team at Automedia. I'm, of course, talking about our Vice President of Content, Mr. Scott Parker. Hey, what's going on,
guys?
How are you?
I'm doing great. I am working on my fan badge for this show. Hopefully a few more likes and comments and I'll get there.
Well, you are one of our top performers. We need you to just keep clicking that like button, Scott. And everybody at home, now you're in competition. You need to keep hitting that like button.
Absolutely.
Scott, you're someone that I've learned a lot from. I continue to learn from on a daily basis. I consider myself, honestly, lucky to work closely with you on numerous projects, and I consider you a friend. So I'm very excited to have you on the show and speak with you in a one-on-one, somewhat less formal setting than our normal parameters. So I want to get into it because this is going to be kind of a long conversation. And This is typically the part of the conversation where I ask our guests to explain their background and how they relate to the automotive industry. Since your resume is pretty long, I wouldn't exactly know where to start. So I'll let you kind of take it away and give our audience some background on who you are as a person and as the VP of Power Automedia's content.
Sure. So I have wanted to be an automotive journalist since I was in high school. I remember flipping through pages of Car and Driver, Muscle Mustangs and Fast Forwards. I just remember thinking, man, this is a dream job, getting to do what these guys do. So at that point, I went to college for journalism. I'm from New Jersey, by the way. So I went to Rutgers University for journalism. And then as I was nearing the end of my tenure there, I started bugging the editor and editorial director of Muscle Mustangs about an internship, about a job. And then, I had gotten out of college. I didn't wind up getting an internship while I was still in school. I played for the university ice hockey team. I frankly didn't have a lot of free time. But I had an internship when I got out. It was a very nice woman. She was kind of a one-man band running this magazine. Literally, we drove to the printer in one of the worst neighborhoods in Philadelphia in the middle of the night. It was like 1:00 in the morning. So I literally was part of the process of making a magazine from literally from the ground up, where they're printing the magazines and doing quality control on the paper and the printing itself. So that was a really great experience. And then from there, I started doing some sports writing for a local newspaper. That was a really great experience. And I got into some freelance writing. And then I had been doing that for almost a year. And I must have had 5-6 jobs at that point. And I was like, man, it's been a year and I don't have a full-time job as a journalist. I'm like, I don't know if this is going to work out. I'm like, I'm like sitting there. I'm like, I don't know if I can keep doing this. I'm working at night and working on the weekend and working all the time. Got all these jobs. And then boom, I got an email from the editorial director of Muscle Mustangs, Jim Camposano, basically saying, hey, I know you're a Mustang guy, but would you be interested we have an opening on one of the GM magazines? And I was like, absolutely, sign me up. I'll be there. When can I show up? So thankfully that worked out. And, I went to being, just full time on that. I started as an associate editor. I was there for all of, I think, 3-4 months when the editor, my boss, great mentor to me, Rick Jensen, he actually got really sick and went to the hospital about 3 months in. So he was just completely out. I mean, he was completely out. So I had to take over the magazine. I was about as green as you can be. And I had to take over the magazine. I, didn't know what I was doing, but I figured it out. So I did that for a couple of months while he was kind of rebounding. And then slowly we started to transition back to him. And I wound up doing that I was associate editor and I became tech editor. And I was there for about 4.5 years when Rick decided to move on. And then I took over at GM High Tech. So I was at GM High Tech for 9 years in total. It was a really great experience. Again, I feel like I'm saying that a lot, but it was because I was in shops all the time and I was at the track all the time at races. I was racing my own car. I mean, I learned so much stuff by just going to a shop, just asking a lot of questions. So it wound up being really great. I mean, it's just experience of a lifetime. And then, I had been at GM High Tech, as I said, for 9 years. And part of that, they had moved us to Florida at that point. And then, after the 9th year, I was kind of like, well, this is kind of old hat. I'd really like a new challenge. And they had just started a web department at our company. Previously, they had just taken, print stories and uploaded them online, and they had decided to make a very concerted effort on the digital side. So they hired a digital team, and I led the digital team in Florida. We had, I think I had 10 or 12 magazines there. I ran all of their websites. So it was, again, great experience. Unfortunately, it was fairly short-lived. They made a good go at that, but unfortunately, they were not financially solvent. So they had one round of layoffs, and my position changed a little bit. I wound up working under Jim again as associate content director in the Super Chevy Network, and I did that for a little while until they closed that office, and then at which point I started my own business. And then right around that time, I kind of seen the writing on the wall and I knew that I needed some other options. I can't tell you how many times in the last couple of years before that, I had ran into somebody that, I used to work at the St. Pete Times. It happened to me 5 times in the course of about 3 months. I was at a dealership picking up our 2012 Camaro, and the guy was like, what do you do when you're, making small talk? He's like, I used to work at the St. Pete Times. That happened to me 5 times. I'm like, there's just all these people that used to work in journalism that don't anymore. They're in other walks of life. And so that it was kind of like a scared straight scenario. So I went so at that point I was like, all right, I'm just going to dedicate myself to going back to school. I had already taken some classes on kind of internet technology, just kind of understanding the web. I had taken some business classes online, and at that point, I that had gone well, and I decided, I kind of dipped my toe in. I'm just going to go all the way in, and I applied for graduate school. And then, so when I was laid off, I just, it wound up being a good thing for me because I was able to concentrate on school. It gave me a lot more flexibility, with my day to day, because I had just had my first child. So now I had all this flexibility to help take care of her, to go to school. And then I worked in between. and it really worked out really well for me. I mean, I was freelance writing. In that point, I wrote a book, and then I was doing a lot of other work for like on some local clients. Whether it was marketing stuff, copywriting, whatever. So it wound up doing very well. And again, it afforded me a lot of flexibility, better income, and it wound up being much better scenario for me while I was in school. And I did that for a couple of years. And right as I was finishing up my MBA, I saw this job come up for director of content and strategy at Automedia. And I was very familiar with Automedia, having been to their sites many times. They had been a competitor of mine. LSX Magazine was a direct competitor for us at GM High Tech, so I was very familiar with it. And I saw this opportunity came up and thought, hey, let's give it a try. Let's see what that's all about. And I was really impressed. From the time I flew out to California, I met James and Megan and the whole leadership team. And I met the rest of the staff, and I was just really impressed with what everyone had built here, and I knew I wanted to be a part of it, and it was a great opportunity. So from there, I've been here for 3 years now, and the end of last year is when I became vice president, and that was after kind of helping with horsepower wars, and kind of the scope kind of expanded a little bit, and I wasn't just doing straight magazine stuff. So I guess that's the long short story, or the short long story, one or the other.
Well, I kind of want to jump around here because you mentioned a lot of stuff that I want to address. The thing that's jumping out in my head right now is what you just mentioned, and that's this wide breadth of your duties now, right? Because you're not just doing journalism anymore. It's a lot more in depth than that, and I think it takes a unique person to do that because you have to have your finger on many pulses, not just one. We have Automedia has numerous titles, and they're all catering to different people with different automotive afflictions, if you will. So I think, like I said, it takes a special person to do that. And so I want to jump back to the beginning, Scott. Since I know you, I believe that your father, right? He was a teacher, music teacher, if I recall correctly. And usually whenever I'm talking to car people, a lot of times they get their love or passion for automobiles from their father or an uncle or somebody who taught them about cars to begin with. Is that the same case for you?
To some extent. So my grandfather had a service shop, and he sold and inspected Buicks. So that's kind of a little bit of my family background. I'm a bit of a black sheep in my family. Everyone in my family are in my immediate family are all teachers. They're in education, and they're highly educated, more so than I even. I'll tell you. So, but my dad, yeah, I mean, he took me to car shows when I was a kid, and my uncle, he was used to restore Model A's and Model T's.
Oh, cool.
And my cousin, he built a trying to remember what year Chevy truck he built, probably 63, 64 Chevy pickup C10. And then with his older brother, my other cousin, they built like a 70s Comanche that was lifted, that was really cool. So I had some stuff around me. I wouldn't say I was like terribly active in the hobby until probably, I was 18 or so. I bought a Mustang when I was 18. So that was kind of my first kind of, getting involved, I would say. But I was more kind of on the periphery. I had a friend around that time that would, used to go to Philly for street races all the time. I would go with him as a passenger. I didn't race.
Sure, Scott. Sure.
No, my car was too slow. I would have got killed.
Well, it was a Mustang. What are you gonna do?
Oh yeah, it was a two valve. was a two valve. The Mustang thing was an issue. It was more the stock
I'm
two
just
valve.
kidding. All you Ford fans, don't destroy me in the comments.
Can you hear me grinding my teeth over here?
I'm just kidding. I like Mustangs too.
The car that we used to go to in the races with, that we used to drive over, was a Fox body GT, open headers. I think it was like a 331 stroker. I mean, it was
getting
fast.
after it. Yeah.
Yeah, for a street car.
Cool. So yeah, so you're doing a little bit of racing and stuff. I want to fast forward to when you were talking about kind of taking a step away from journalism, and you seeing the writing on the wall, and people, you having those run-ins with people who had left, different publications. Do you find yourself running into people who made the same transition as you, who had this skill set in journalism and said, okay, well, everything's digital now, I have to make this transition? Or did they just kind of leave it and do something else?
Kind of a mixture. Definitely kind of a mixture. It's definitely a special skill set to do what we do. I will say that as things have gone on, you've had to be more of a jack of trades than ever. I mean, when I started, man, I'm really going to date myself. When I started, I was shooting on film. So I was shooting on film. Granted, we did have it digitized. So there was no Facebook, there was no any of this. So I shot and I wrote and I copy edited. That's pretty much it. So, I mean, to go from that to today, when we've got, you're firing off, I mean, all too well, you're firing off newsletters twice a week. You're shooting, you're posting on Facebook, you're posting on Instagram. You're managing, you're trying to keep your eye out for news that you can publish daily at the same time that you're publishing your more longer form stories. That is a balancing act that we didn't have back in the day. And I think that it has changed the game a lot. I mean, this is the game that's not for the meek. It is not for the meek. You got to be strong to hang in there at this point. And the days are gone when you're just sitting in your room, just kind of whittling away at some little story. I mean, you got to balance a lot of spinning plates.
Certainly, I think it takes a dynamic individual to handle everything that we do. But it's fun, and it's one of the things that I really love about it, because you're not constantly doing the same thing over and over again. I would probably die if that was the case. But anyways, so we fast forward. You're the VP of content here at Power Automedia. You're here. You're managing a lot of the daily operations that we have going on. And now it seems that during this whole shutdown that's taken place, you've made some time for something fun, which is awesome. And that's your YouTube channel, right? Mm-hmm. So you're back to creating content like yourself, instead of overseeing and managing, which has got to be a lot of fun for you. Tell us about your channel, Strictly Pro Touring. What's going on?
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I don't do a lot of content creation these days. So this was just kind of a fun little side project for me, and to give me kind of a home for all of that, that type of content. So, I mean, I've been working on some stuff. It started as, hey, I really need a spot to do some vlogging about my project car. And then once I got into it, I'm like, well, there's only so much I can just talk about my car all the time. So I'm like, let's expand just a little bit. So, I've been fortunate enough. I have got a few friends here and there, and I got them to participate in one of the vlogs. That's definitely something I like to do a little bit more in the future. And kind of really take a deep dive into pro touring and explore that quite a bit.
Definitely. You've done several videos, and I want to touch on some of them individually. And I certainly want to get to your project car, because it's a project car for my title, Street Muscle, which is awesome. But for right now, I want to start with the name, right? Strictly Pro Touring. It's very implicit, right? Like, this is all we're going to be talking about. It's only pro touring. I like all kinds of muscle cars, be it pro street, pro touring, traditional, just restos. But pro touring is just, I mean, would you say in the past, I don't know, 20 years or so, it has just taken over as far as popularity is concerned? Is that the most popular arena for modern muscle cars? Not modern muscle cars, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I honestly probably not.
No?
Street strip, I mean, drag racing is huge. Pro touring is it's not like the most niche, but it's frankly is what I'm passionate about. And that's the thing. If I'm going to be spending my free time doing this, I wanted to make sure that it was something that I was passionate about. And I know if I have to be on camera, I'm stone faced enough. If it's not something that's like I'm passionate about, it's not something that I'm going to be spending, as I will tonight, midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning editing something, if I'm not passionate about it. And it comes through on the camera too. I mean, you can tell when you watch some people that are really good vloggers, like people that have huge audience like Cletus. I mean, that dude, you won't find any more enthusiasm than a guy like that. That's why people watch it. You can tell he's passionate about it, and that's how people get into it. So it was really important to me that I picked a niche that I was just really passionate about.
You really think that at this point in the game, pro touring is a niche in the muscle car arena? I mean, when you look at any major builder these days who's running the show circuit, it's going to be a pro touring car. There's not anybody who's building pro street cars anymore, or well, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of people drag racing, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think that I think it is growing. To me, it seems much larger than Pro Street at this point, as you pointed out. I think it's overtaken Pro Street. It's probably overtaken a lot of stuff. But Pro Touring also, you have to keep in mind what you're considering Pro Touring and what you're not considering Pro Touring.
Right.
I mean, that's a hotly contested thing. And that was one of the videos that I did, was what is pro touring. And some people consider, if you look at Rampage or even Mike Dussault's cars, a lot of people would consider those not pro touring cars. I mean, Mike Dussault's Camaro has a full belly pan diffuser. I mean, it does not get any more race than that. But love the car. Nothing against Mike. Beautiful car. Rampage, I ogled that thing. That thing probably still has my drool on it from the casino when they unveiled it. Love that car. But arguably, I mean, a lot of people, myself included, probably would not consider those pro touring.
Interesting. Okay, well, let's
they're not roadworthy. They're roadworthy. You can drive them on the street, but that's not a car with an AC and a sound system necessarily.
Right.
They've gone too far in the race direction.
Okay, so yeah, let's expand on that, right? Let's because you've done several theory vlogs on strictly pro touring, and one of the questions I wanted to ask you about was where do you think the history of pro touring begins?
It's interesting that you asked that. I actually reached out to Jeff Smith. Any good web search, of course, begins on Wikipedia. For better or worse, just admit it. We all go there. Okay.
It's not it's not peer reviewed, Scott, but
yeah.
All right.
So, being the good journalist that I am, I of course went to the source that they use. So in Wikipedia, they actually quote Jeff Smith and Mark Stilo as the creators of the term. So I happen to know, as you know Jeff Smith. So the first thing I did was email Jeff Smith. Hey Jeff, this is what it says on Wikipedia. Can you, is this true? Can you expand on this a little bit more? And thankfully he did for me. So it began with Jeff Smith and Mark Stilo. And keep in mind, in those magazine days, we always wanted to create terms that we could put on the cover. What is pro touring? Pro touring? What's pro touring? Pro street? They're catchy. They grab people's attention. So coining a term like that, that's like, that's journalism gold right there. So yeah, apparently it dates back to Jeff Smith and Mark Stilo. Mark Stilo is credited with building the first pro touring car, that the Camaro that he raced at one lap, and that's supposedly what spawned the craze.
Certainly. Yeah, I had a chance. It's funny that you mentioned that. I actually called Jeff Smith just the other day, because in preparation for another interview that we're getting ready to do, with Troy Trepanier. And so I did a little bit of historical digging myself, and he mentioned the same thing. So this was around, what I guess uh, would have been late 90s that he coined that term. But so there we have the beginning of all of it, right? So now you've done a great job of this by reaching out to some other people and commenting on it yourself. But now, I guess, can we define pro touring? Because you said that there's some people who might not be in agreement with what is and what isn't. Where do you fall in all that?
Sure. The thing about language is that it evolves, right? Um, and it's and words are just words. I mean, they're how we communicate. I think it's important that we have a shared understanding for it, because if you call a phone a ratchet, how am I going to understand what you're talking about? So to me, it is important that we try to come to some sort of consensus on the term. Some people don't like the term pro touring at all, which I found out in the one video that I did, which I think was interesting in itself. And I think it's important to have these sort of conversations. Now, if you're asking me what my opinion is, my personal opinion, I hearken back to the original definition, that these are cars that, you're going to drive on this. It comes from Grand Touring. It should be something you could drive coast to coast. They're comfortable. You could drive it every day, drive it coast to coast, but it has to handle and it has to perform. I mean, it's that those are the essential elements to it. And where I think people kind of go astray is where they go too racy, or they're in the other end of the spectrum where they try to call it pro touring just because the car is lowered. In my opinion, there is some expectation of ingenuity, whether you're, doing what some of these guys are doing now, or swapping a whole, doing the body swap with like a 67 Mustang on an S550, body or chassis, or something like that. Or if you're doing what I did, which is buying a bolt-in chassis, or if you're creating your own 4-link, you're creating a push rod suspension, whatever you're doing, there's some aspect of ingenuity. It's got to be a little bit beyond, hey, I just put some different leaf springs in it, and some lowering springs and some shocks, and pro touring. I think you got to go beyond that.
Okay. Well, I mean, you're kind of touching on another question that I had for you. And that's, is there a one size fits all approach to building a pro touring car? And it sounds like maybe not. I mean, it's very common to see people using the LS platform, or even pretty much any late model engine these days, whether that's the Coyote, Gen 3 Hemi, what have you. But do you have to have a modern power plant for it to be considered pro touring? Do you have to have, like I said, is there a formula?
No, I don't think so. I think that's a confusion too with resto mod versus pro touring. Now, resto mod, if you've got a resto mod, yes, you have to have a modern powertrain. That's by definition what a resto mod is. Pro touring, not at all. I chose to go that route. But that's because I didn't want to deal with like oiling issues on a Pontiac 400 that I don't know anything about. Frankly, I know LS engines. I know that platform. That's what I'm familiar with, and I knew I could do that reliably and have fun. I didn't want to spend my time banging my head against the wall trying to figure out, having a custom dry sump system put in, and trying to figure out weird stuff. More power to the guys that do that. Some people, they know those platforms, or they like that struggle of figuring things out. I'm a driver. I get my enjoyment out of two things: the idea itself, and then the idea coming to life, and then actually driving the car. The in between struggle, not my favorite part. a lot of the people some people just like tinkering on stuff. That's also not the genre that I fall into. So more power to those guys. But no, I don't think that there is a formula. To come back to your original question, I think you can build anything like that. Was that one car that had the Tesla motor and the push rod suspension?
Right.
I
Well,
mean, that thing was off the
that
wall.
brings up an interesting question. So are there limits then? Like, could you build like a Model T Pro Touring car? Could you build a third gen F body Pro Touring car? You know what I mean? Or does it only apply to a certain year range?
That's another great point. I think going back, you could probably go back to a Model T. That seems like it might be a little bit of a stretch, just because there's not a lot of car to a Model T.
Right.
But there are Tri-5s that I would consider Pro Touring. There are first generation Corvettes that I would consider Pro Touring. But going the other direction, a lot of people, and myself included, think that once you get to the what we would call late model, that they're no longer applied, to Pro Touring. To me, the limit is probably about 80s is about the limit that I would consider Pro Touring. I just have a hard time calling like a C5 Corvette Pro Touring.
Right.
I mean, that's a beautifully engineered car that you're
Sports car.
some coilovers and some sway bars on it and headed to the track. I mean,
Right. So then there's not in your mind there's not necessarily any requirements other than those that you've mentioned so far. Like, you don't have to have a link suspension system if the car was originally a leaf sprung car. You don't have to I don't know, have airbags or plush leather interior. Those aren't requirements for Pro Touring. I mean, obviously they would aid in the comfort and drivability, but I guess what I'm getting at is like I'm really trying to nail this down and define the genre.
yeah, I mean, specifically, probably not. It'd be hard to really grab a specific thing. The biggest thing I would say is having the larger wheels. I mean, that's like a dead giveaway for a pro touring car. If you don't have at least 17s, if not 18s, not really pro touring. If you're not, if you're not radically improving the suspension, through some means. I don't even want to not, some people would say, oh, bolt-on suspension shouldn't count, but at this point, almost everything is bolt-on. I mean,
Right. Yeah.
I mean, you've seen Ivan's F100. I mean, that don't get me wrong, he's done some welding and some work on that and stuff, but QA1 stuff is, I mean, that's just beautiful stuff, like out of the box.
Right.
And
You can't knock a manufacturer for catering to a market that's, wanting.
Yeah, exactly. So I think the level of modification is really important, and having some aspect of comfort. If you look in there, it shouldn't be an aluminum Kirky race seat, full containment seat with a little bit of foam. That's not going to fly as a pro touring car. But that said, you probably don't need to have $1,500 seats either. I mean, I think you asked before about the budget, talking about budget a little bit, and if there's one misconception that I think pro touring has, and it's an area that we should probably do whatever we can to stay away from, is falling into the trap that a pro touring car has to be 100 or 200K build. I mean, that's very exclusion. It excludes a lot of people.
Certainly.
I don't see any benefit to doing that. So when the people are saying, oh, well, a third gen or a G body can't be pro touring, I mean, that's kind of what you're doing. I mean, those are some relatively cheap platforms. You exclude those, and it comes down to, an A body or an X body, or, I mean, Novas are beautiful cars, but how many thousands of dollars are you going to spend making that a pro touring car?
Right. Well, yeah, you're right. I did want to ask that question, Scott. And that question is, can you build an affordable pro touring car? And if so, I mean, I guess what platforms lend themselves to it, and those two that you just mentioned, the G body and the third gen F body. But yeah, in your opinion, do you or can you build an affordable pro touring car?
I think so. Some of the cars are just easier to work on. And that was kind of the purpose of one of the last videos that I did, was just honing in on some cars some platforms that I think really lend themselves really well to pro touring. As other people have commented, on the video, you can make just about anything pro touring if you put enough work into it. But if you're not blessed with a 7-figure salary, that might be a little difficult in some cases. So yeah, I mean, I think F bodies are generally good. G body is a good platform. They're affordable. You can find a G body from anywhere from $500, to 10 grand, depending on how nice the car is. But, I think that's a very good platform. Third gens, that can be a good platform to start. So yeah, absolutely.
I want to jump back to, you mentioned earlier about wheel and tire sizes. And you said, it'd be difficult to claim pro touring status if you were wearing anything less than 17-inch wheels. One of the knocks that I see a lot on Street Muscle's Facebook page and Instagram is if we post something that has larger wheels. There's a lot of traditionalists on our page, and they love 15-inch Kragers or Keystones or slot mags, and so do I. They're awesome. But one of the claims that they make is, I see this continually, like, oh, well, that thing could never handle on those rubber band tires, or it needs more sidewall. It could, that thing can't handle it all. And since I've driven late model cars, I know that to be untrue. But why do you think that misconception exists? And can a car with big wheels and small sidewall tires perform?
On an autocross or a road course, absolutely. Talking about a drag strip, that's a different story.
Right.
I'll take a thicker sidewall on a drag strip any day. 100% right on there. On an autocross course, not so much. Having autocross course is all about having a stiff sidewall. It's not about having a thick sidewall. It's about having a stiff sidewall, and having a grippy tire, a nice grippy pattern, and a soft compound. So, absolutely. And the thing is too, the bigger the wheels, the bigger your brakes are going to be.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's all where it stems from. You have these old school guys who are used to heading to the drag strip, and there's nothing wrong with that. But there's not there's nothing saying that you can't perform on a road course or an autocross course, just like you said. But at the same time, sometimes we see like, I don't know if you're familiar with like Donkmaster or some of these big wheel cars that have like 24s or 26-inch wheels with these really skinny tires, and they're making fast passes, man. I mean, what's up with that? Like, is that it's doable, right? I guess it's not for me. It's not for me.
I have no comment on that.
Fair enough, Scott.
I watch in amazement. I just no comment. I can tell you from years of owning, F bodies and Corvettes and stuff. Thin sidewalls, not your friend on the drag strip.
Right.
Those guys, I don't know what they're doing, how they're doing it. Bless their hearts.
I will say I've watched a lot of those videos. I think the key is pulling a ton of power down low, because they leave like grandma and then just pour on all the power. I don't think traction even comes into play there. I don't think they have power until at least 100 feet out.
Yeah.
Right. I think maybe I need to have
this just hanging on for dear life with that crazy angle that they're at.
Yeah, seriously. How do you even set the pinion angle on something like that? But maybe I need to have one of them on the show and ask them about it firsthand. But yeah, so you can have big wheels. It allows you to have bigger brakes and the whole thing. I want to come full circle, Scott, and talk about your Project Payback on streetmusclemag.com. So all this information and knowledge that you've gathered about the pro touring aftermarket has enabled you to kind of piece together this car. Can you tell us about it?
Sure. It's a 1968 Pontiac GTO. Um, it started this. It was started life as a 400 car. Um, when I got it, it had been essentially left for dead at some point. It had been in a wrecking yard, and a guy picked it up and pieced it back together with some, like a 70s 400 that he had lying around with like a 2-barrel carb on it, and turbo 400. And so he pieced it together. It was a whole car. And initially, I had intended, like, okay, let's start out with some suspension mods and get this thing on the road. And but first, it needed some body work. And while I was at the body shop was just moving it around, and that the engine just started sounding worse and worse every time we started it. And I was like, oh man, I'm not gonna pull the 400 and rebuild this thing. And no, I'm just not gonna do that. So at that point, I knew I wanted to go pro touring the whole time, no doubt. I just had originally intended a kind of a slower progression, but when that happened, it just kind of kicked everything into high gear. So um, at that point, I talked to Chevrolet Performance, and we got an LT4 crate engine for it. Crate engine I sent to Lingenfelter. They essentially just put a larger pulley, supercharger pulley on the front of the crank, and retuned it, and it goes from 640 horsepower to 720. So that's the power plant we chose. And then Chevrolet Performance actually sells us an entire package with a T56 Magnum, and a clutch, QuickTime bell housing, shifter, everything, and as well as the wiring harness. So we got that entire package from them, and then as well as I pieced together some stuff from Silver Sport, and then and that stuff. I had intended originally to start on the stock chassis. However, this car had been hit in the rear, um, and I didn't want to spend thousands of dollars, straightening it and welding it up. And it's not a fully boxed chassis, so I would have spent a lot of money just trying to get it right, and I didn't want to do that. So I went to the master at Dale Schwartz, and Dale and Jeff hooked me up. We worked out a deal, got this chassis shipped out to California, fully assembled, powder coated, everything ready to just bolt right up. It's incredibly beautiful. I had seen their Tempests run at quite a few events for years, going all the way back to LS Fest. The first or the second LS Fest. I had seen them at the Street Machine Nationals running this thing. So I was well aware of their abilities, and that they were into Pontiacs and all that stuff. So I was really excited to be working with them. Had obviously seen pictures of the chassis before I got it, but man, it didn't really prepare me. Once I got it, I just started looking it over, and I'm just ogling this thing. I'm like, wow, this is just a really nice piece. We've got Bear brakes front and rear, that Schwartz private labels. We've got a full floater rear end, 9-inch setup. It's just really nice.
Yeah, that thing's insane.
Yeah.
If you go on their website, for those of you who are tuning in at home, if you go on the Schwartz website, they have a bunch of videos. But one of the videos that really sticks out in my mind every time I think about what they make, is the video. And I don't know if you've seen this one, Scott. You probably have, where they're like stepping on the corner of, I think it's an A body frame, and you can literally see like just the entire frame flex on the car, and that's a stock frame. And then they do the same thing with their G Machine chassis, and it's just, I mean, stiff as a board. It's crazy. And then when I saw the install going down with your car, it was like, wow, this piece is immaculate. If you're going to set your car on top of something, that's something to be proud of for sure.
Absolutely. And the crazy thing is, even though it's so much stronger than a factory frame, it's also lighter too. So I mean, you don't get me wrong, if you've got nothing but time and you can do all the welding yourself, it's definitely going to be cheaper for you to work on a factory frame. But at the end of the day, starting with like a Schwartz chassis, it's going to be lighter and it's going to be stronger. I mean, it's the way to go if you can swing it.
Certainly. So yeah, so now you got the body set on the frame. You got all these nice pieces of jewelry underneath it. You have the engine and transmission in. I know you had to do a little bit of massaging with the different with the trans tunnel. It's a manual car. The car wasn't originally a manual, so you had to do some clearancing there. You got the pedals in now. What stage of the project are you in?
So at this point, the car is a roller. It's got the engine and the trans in it. The tunnel is finished. We just cut the steering shaft, so I'm going to put the steering shaft in. So I'll have steering again, and then we're going to be doing the accessory drive. It's still got the Chevrolet, what it came from the factory as a crate engine with. So we're going to put an accessory drive on there from Holly. Those engines, all they came from the factory with electric power steering. So you've got to do an aftermarket accessory drive if you want power steering, which is pretty much essential. If you've got a big old A body, you want to drive it on the street, you want to drive it on the autocross, you absolutely have to have power steering.
100%. So that's where you're at now. It's fantastic. If you guys haven't seen it, go on streetmusclemag.com and go under our project section and look for Project Payback. Scott has some updates as well as the rendering, which is like my favorite. You had a few different color choices at the beginning of all this, and my favorite was the one that you eventually picked, which was like that really, really cool ice blue kind of color. What is it? Does it have a name?
No, I mean, we basically, I told Eric Brockmeyer did the rendering. I worked with Eric for years, and he's awesome. I mean, you can just hand him some ideas, and he'll just kind of run with it. So if you think that I had like a lot of input on, hey, do the stripe this way, never happened. Eric is just that good. So I basically said, Eric, I kind of like Aspen blue and some of the factory 68 GTO blues. However, I want something a little more. I want no teal. I want like something kind of a blue silver, and that's what he came up with, and I thought it came out great.
Yeah, it did. It came out really fantastic, and the other colors were awesome too. There was a red one, and what was the other color? It was like a darker blue, like a navy or like a royal blue.
Yeah, it was like it's a pretty electric blue. I think I got that off a Lexus, maybe. It was another it was like a late model, like OEM color. So the silver blue, I said I want a silver blue, kind of like this stuff. But that blue, I actually said, oh, I want the color from this car. So
definitely,
I think it was a Lexus.
So you got this connect and cruise kit under the car. You got these, badass brakes, really cool chassis, the whole deal. The latest update, I believe, was something about the wheels, right?
Sure. So we're going to we need to measure for the wheels, and then we're going to have a custom set of wheels built from Forge Line. So
awesome. Have you given any thought to the design, or how does that whole process work out with them?
In terms of the design, I'm probably leaning towards something like what's in the rendering. I am for as much as I like my technology and my late model stuff, I really like 5-spoke wheels. However, I would have punched myself if I got just a straight 5-spoke. So I'm going for probably like a split 5-spoke kind of look.
Very cool. I dig the kind of mesh style that creates.
Mm-hmm.
But what about interior, Scott? What are we doing with interior?
Still working on that. I definitely want some sort of race seats. I have a roll bar from S&W, which is going to be pretty cool because it actually has we're going to build it with a removable harness bar so that you can actually use the back seat.
Very cool.
Yeah, very important that I have a back seat in the car. I have owned some race cars in the past, and they didn't really get used. So might have racing them a couple of times, and then they're like, oh, well, I'm not really going to drive it on the street, so it just sits there. Or you get in the predicament where you've only got one seat. So like I have a wife and 2 kids, so kids can't get in the front seat. And it's rare that I just take driving around with my wife at this point, especially in this craziness here going on. So it was very important that we had a back seat. So it'll have a back seat, and with that removable harness bar, it'll be usable too. So
Well, that brings up a good question, Scott. What are your plans on for the car? Like, so once it's done, once you because I mean, it's going to be making like a crazy amount of power. It's this
Mhm.
awesome car that, yeah, sure, you could drive on the street. You could probably daily it if you want to at that point. But
Mhm.
what are your goals for the car once it's done?
I want to drive the heck out of this thing. I want to drive it on the street. I mean, at least drive it one day a week would be nice, if not more. Just to drive it on the street. I mean, that's why that's why
Is
we're
it
building this car, to enjoy it. And
definitely?
then I'm going to autocross it. You know, I fully intend to run the NMCA West Series, LS Fest West. Good Guys is a show out here with an autocross. I'll probably go to that. So just basically anything I can get my hands on. SCCA, NASA, you name it, and any autocross in the area, I'm game.
Very cool. So what did you do for the rear end gears since you obviously you want to use it as a not necessarily a daily, but on the street, but you also want to do some short course stuff. What kind of rear end did you put in there or
It's a
gears?
370.
Okay, cool. Yeah, yeah. Good.
I've got
uh,
a lot of torque, so I don't need. I mean, it's enough gear, and I've got double overdrive, and then I've got a lot of torque with that blower. So I should be good out of the hole, and I should have should have good mileage too.
yeah.
Surprisingly, on the highway.
What kind of diff is in there?
It's Mosier. Everything's from Mosier. The differential itself, I
Is it a
believe.
torsion style or
No, it's a it's a helical gear style from, I believe it's an Eaton.
okay. Very cool. So Scott, that's really cool. Again, for everybody who wants updates on it, go check out streetmusclemag.com, and of course, check out Scott's channel, Strictly Pro Touring. I'm curious your thoughts on the future of this niche that you say, right? Pro touring. What does the future hold for pro touring? What do you see trends going, and what are you seeing right now as far as popularity is concerned?
I think the popularity is growing, which is great to see. I mean, again, just something I'm really passionate about. So that's, and that's what I hope to do with the channel, is just continue to kind of preach the gospel of pro touring and get more people into it. That's my hope. Um, but what I'm seeing is that more and more parts are becoming available for more and more cars. That F100 that we're building on Ford Muscle, and you'll see that on Street Muscle too. That's a perfect example of that. Up until I think it was last SEMA, when QA1 introduced that suspension, there were like no options. The only thing you could do if you had an F100, where I think it was a Crown Vic chassis people were using,
Yep.
there just weren't options. And now you have these great bolt-on options, that you can turn, a rusty old pickup truck that no one would have ever thought twice about autocrossing, never ever thought of that as a performance vehicle, and you're able to make that thing handle. That's great, and that's what I like to see. I mean, I think first generation Camaros are beautiful, Firebirds too, but like, I've seen so many pro touring first gen Camaros at this point. Like, just give me some variety. That's what I'm seeing, and that's what I'm thankful for. I hope for more of it. I mean, bring your Studebaker out. I don't care. I love the variety. That's one of my favorite one of my favorite things.
I dig it too, and I really like the fact that they lend themselves to competition, the likes of what you're describing, like autocross and short course, uh, because I think it makes it more accessible for the average person, right? Like if you wanted to start piecing together a build, you don't have to build it all overnight, but you can still go out and have some fun and get involved. Um, I was asking you about trends just a moment ago. A trend that I'm after having interviewed several people and talking to people within the industry, a trend that I'm hoping to take part in, and I'm seeing some people mention the same thing, is kind of like a nod to these vintage race cars with these builds, right? A lot of companies making those larger mini light style wheels, People, with door numbers on their muscle cars. I think it's pretty cool. Is that a trend that you're seeing or noticing?
A little bit. I mean, I think the cool part is that, as you were saying before, there's such a wide variety of tastes. So bringing that into the mix and getting people interested in things like autocross that are more traditionalist, I think that sort of a trend has that power to do that. So I do hope that catches on. I haven't seen a lot of that, but I do see a lot of traditionalists and people like you're talking about that just want nothing to do with 18-inch wheels. So
Yeah. Well, Scott, I want to take a moment to go over some of the videos that are on your channel that I've watched, and I thought were pretty cool. So I want to put a spotlight on them for our viewers currently who can go and check these out. And I think you did this one. It says 2 weeks ago, and that was something that we talked about just a moment ago, and that was unibody versus body on frame. I think you got some good traction with that one. It seemed to spark a lot of debate. Where do you fall in that discussion? Which one? Oh, I'm sorry. Which is better for pro touring? A unibody frame or a unibody car or a body on frame car?
I'm like somewhere in the middle. I know that's probably not the answer you were hoping for. The reason being that the cars are a package deal. So you don't just get to choose, I want a body on frame, or I want a unibody car with a 90-inch wheelbase and 3,000-pound base weight. You don't get to do that. It's a package deal. For me, I chose the A body because to me it was the perfect pro touring car, because it had all of the comfort that I wanted and the performance I wanted without getting into something that's like crazy heavy. Now that said, if I was choosing something based on just autocross performance, I would probably have like a second gen, like a mid-year Corvette would probably be my choice, which is a body on frame car. There are plenty of unibody. There are a couple of unibody, platforms out there that are also very good for autocross. But a mid-year Corvette, which is, again, back to that package deal. You've got a shorter wheelbase. It's going to do a lot better on an autocross course than a longer unibody car.
Right. Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that because I have both, but they're both set up for totally different things. And so I'll be interested to find out because the Firebird, it's got a front subframe, and then the Monte Carlo, of course, like your GTO, is a full frame car. So I'll be interested to see what happens with both of those. Another video that you published recently is titled "Don't Hate, I Put an LT4 in my GTO," and the little thumbnail is pretty funny too. But my question is, do you get a lot of hate from Pontiac purists or just purists in general for putting a modern power plant in your car? And what do they tell you?
Yeah, I get some for sure. I think when we first announced the project, it was like the second comment was, "Don't put an LS in it." And then on like another video, I had somebody who was like, "Don't put, hope it doesn't have it doesn't have an LS." And I was like, "Oh, it's got an LT. I mean, it's not really an LS." Like,
why do you think there's so much like hate on that platform in particular?
What it comes down to is, and I can tell you one of the things I didn't mention with my background too, is when I started at GM High Tech, I was also working for High Performance Pontiac and for Muscle Mustangs too. I wrote for really all three. So I have had enough contact with these rabid Pontiac guys to tell you that they are diehard. They just have a lot of passion, the same passion that I have for pro touring. They've got that for Pontiac, and they are as loyal to the Pontiac brand as you can be. So that's basically where it comes from. It comes from passion. It doesn't really come from anger, like they hate me, they hate the world thing. It's more like they love Pontiac so much, and they just want every Pontiac to be all Pontiac, and that's it. Which I can respect. I mean, I
Yeah,
can respect their passion for sure,
I
and
get that.
they are great engines. They are great engines. You'd be hard pressed to find another platform like that you can make that much power naturally aspirated. It's a very good platform.
If they didn't get so hot and those cylinder walls weren't so thin, I would agree with you. But I mean, myself included, I've seen so many of them blow up. I don't know, and maybe I'll get a lot of hate in my own comments here, but that's just my own experience. And I'm sure there's gonna be people saying that, well, you don't know how to build an engine. Okay, that's fine, but I think that LT4 will serve you very well, especially with the Lingenfelter treatment. Um, Scott, I want to give you an opportunity to plug any future videos that you have in the works, and also just kind of give you an open forum to discuss anything that you'd like to plug.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I just number one, I would definitely like to plug all of my sponsors on the build, like Schwartz. Without their help, that this whole entire build would not be possible. Um, so that's first and foremost. But I would also like to mention I do have a couple of engine related videos coming out. The next one is going to be on LS engines, and I'll do a piece on Gen 5 engines as well, LT engines. That is right in my bread and butter in my wheelhouse. I've spent a large portion of my career just kind of immersed in LS, Gen 3, Gen 4, and then Gen 5 as that came out. So that's right in my wheelhouse, and it's something that hopefully will be helpful to the pro touring community. And and if there are additional questions or videos on that stuff, I'd love to do them. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to comment on them, and be happy to tackle those.
Certainly. That goes the same here, guys. If you have any questions for Scott, drop them in the comment section below. Of course, he's a phone call away from me, so I can answer those really quickly for you guys. Scott, before I let you go, I do want to ask you this. I meant to ask it earlier, but it's on my mind. It seems to me that you're a bit of a convert from being a Ford guy to a GM guy. Is that a fair assessment?
Uh, Not really. I will tell you, I am a car guy. And that was and it's funny that you answered that question. I'm having deja vu to about 16 years ago, because as I mentioned, when Jim first asked me, hey, we have an opening on the GM magazine. I know you're a Mustang guy. Would you be interested in it? My response to him is the same I'll give to you, which is I am a car guy. I grew up reading Car and Driver. I mean, if I could own one of everything, I would have it. Like I see, you're gonna think I'm weird, but I really love the last generation WRX hatchback.
No, those are awesome. I love those
Yeah,
cars.
I do not like the sedan with the big wing, but I
No, no
love
one
that.
does.
Mhm. So if I could get one of those, I would love to have one of those. I would love, my dream car is probably a 928, preferably with an LS swap. So that's also like floating, around here somewhere. I'd love to own a C10. I haven't owned a lot of Chevys, but also I would say a Cyclone is on my wish list as well. Um, so I like all kinds of stuff. I've never owned a Fox body. I've only owned a New Edge. So I would definitely like to own a Fox body at some point. So, I'll take it. It takes all kinds over here.
Well, as much as I think that's the perfect place to end this, because you're a car guy, and that's probably where we should end it. I do want to ask you though: do you think New Edge Mustangs are going to be? Are they reaching their time? Are they going to be the next Fox body? Are you going to see a lot more people doing stuff with them since they're so cheap now?
I have to think so. I mean, Fox bodies, the prices are getting outrageous. And the New Edge, they're affordable. I mean, I think there's probably some truth to that. I think you'll see more and more of those around, and I'm glad that something like that exists. It is a very good platform. It's not quite as light as the Fox, but it's a very good platform. And I think people should take advantage of it.
Cool. Well, Scott, I want to thank you just so much for coming on, giving us your time, and sharing your knowledge about not only pro touring but cars in general. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
Everybody, check out Strictly Pro Touring on YouTube. And Scott, we'll catch you next time, buddy.
Take care. Thanks.
All right. So, Greg, there you have it, man. That's what pro touring is. For more information, anybody who's interested in finding out more about pro touring can head over to Strictly Pro Touring on YouTube. Hey, what's up, buddy? What's up? Come here. Hey.
Oh, who's that?
This is. Whoa. Sorry, I pulled his hair. That's Recon.
Hi, Recon. How are you?
What's up, buddy? Look over here. Hey.
Oh.
So, anyways, another great episode, man. I had a lot of fun interviewing Scott. He's super knowledgeable. Like I mentioned in the beginning of the episode, I've learned so much from him, and I continue to learn on a daily basis. I'm lucky to work with him, and yeah, he just dropped some pro touring knowledge on me, dude. Just boom.
Yeah. Yeah, and you have to be an all-around car guy to like a 928. Either that, or you have to be and I don't mean to offend, but I am related to some, so I feel like I have the grace to say this, a 928 weirdo. Because I know some 928 weirdos. But yeah, I mean, you got to be a car guy to like the 928.
Scott,
the Land Shark.
100% a car guy. Like we all are, he couldn't do his job if he wasn't.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned, Power Automedia has a bunch of different titles, and they all cater to different types of automotive enthusiasts. And he's the director of content, man. He's got to have a finger on the pulse of each one of those magazines and be connected to that audience. And he does a great job. And we all obviously work together to curate our content, but he's the shit, so to speak. And yeah, I think we would be hard pressed to find another person to do that job.
Yeah. I mean, I know in my little world, sometimes it can feel tough to just, pay attention to all the tendrils, and he has to be going, 8-10 times as hard because, my little world is very, very little. Right.
Well, you're, and even you and me, we run titles where we kind of have to do a little bit of the same thing. Street Muscle, for example, is, I have to cater to the pro touring crowd, obviously, like we were just talking to Scott, but also the street strip guys, the guys who are just into restorations, resto mods, high-end builds, garage builds. And so we're all over the place. And you can't just, write about small block Chevy forever. There's countless engine types. And so, the tech content that you create has to run the gamut.
Yeah. And I mean, a perfect example is what will have gone live yesterday when you're watching. So Thursday, new Maserati engine.
What? Oh, that's the one that you were telling me about, dude.
What's this thing has it has some cool F1 technology in it, what they call a pre-chamber ignition. So it's like dual ignition, or it combusts through a tube that then ignites the whole charge. It's really unique. I guess they've tried it, 10 years ago, and the problem was it's just too loud and it doesn't work very well at anything but wide open throttle, but they fixed it. Really goofy setup. They've got a second spark plug that's like hiding off to the side for low RPM, low load stuff. They've got dual fuel injection, so they've got port and direct injection, but they're both operating at 350 bar, which is 5,000-ish PSI. So they've got port injection firing off at 5,000 PSI fuel pressure. It's got a continuously variable dry sump.
Oh wow!
Like this thing is nuts, and they're all proud of it because this is their first 100% Maserati made in Modena engine in a long time. And it's cool. Like as I'm going through all this and watching the videos and reading about it so that I could write it, I'm sitting there going, this is really cool, and not something I would have expected from Maserati.
Right? Yeah, that's what I was.
When you
gonna
think
say.
Formula One, you don't think Maserati.
No, you think Mercedes, you think McLaren. Yeah, that's crazy.
Ferrari,
Yeah.
I mean, and it's cool. Go
That is
read
cool,
it.
man.
I mean,
You got dual ignition, dual injection, dual fuel. This is the dualist engine.
yeah, I mean, dual turbos.
Okay.
And I don't say twin because they're mirror imaged.
Right. Okay.
So they're not twins.
Well, come on, man. You got if you're painting the Mona Lisa, you're not gonna just slap some turbos on it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Oh, and they have electronic wastegates.
Oh man, dude, as if the rest wasn't enough. That's awesome, dude. I can't wait to read about it.
Well, I know the first comment's going to be, "Oh, it's going to suck in 1,000 miles when you have to service all that." Appreciate it for the technological marvel that it is.
The individual who's purchasing whatever vehicle that's going into doesn't care about the service life. They're writing the check and they're driving off in their Maserati.
Yeah, I mean it's going to be cool because they're debuting the car. It'll be in September. So I mean, obviously it's a supercar. I honestly don't know if that would be considered a hypercar or not. They say supercar, so I'm just going to keep saying supercar.
What's at the pinnacle of Maserati's lineup? It's been some time since I've looked into it. I love their Gran Turismo. The Quattroporte is awesome, but I couldn't even name the latest and greatest from Maserati. So
Maserati is so far off my daily radar.
Yeah, exactly.
Honestly, I would say Lamborghini is more on my radar than Maserati. And Lamborghinis are still something that you hear about occasionally for me.
I've never been a huge fan of the Lambo, dude. I like Ferraris, Astons, Maseratis.
I mean, you know what really made me a fan of Lamborghini?
What's that?
Underground Racing.
Oh, the video game. Yeah, yeah.
No. The guys that make like the 1,300, 1,400 horsepower twin turbo ones, the ones that can't run rear bumpers anymore because there's twin turbo systems sticking out. Those guys.
Those are cool. And then what's the other one where it has like a full exo cage? Have you seen that Lambo?
No.
It's got a full exo cage. I want to say it's like a matte black paint job with a purple exo cage all around it. It's a very cool car.
Is it like those like redneck trucks that have the things so you can roll them? Have you ever seen those?
Yeah.
The trucks that are made to roll. Like those things are so cool, but terrifying at the same time.
You couldn't pay me to strap into one of those. Yeah, you could. I'd probably do it for free, but
I don't know, man. I've seen some of those landings, and some of that welding is a little bit suspicious.
All right, I'm looking. Okay, yeah. So it's the Unicorn V3 is a Lamborghini Huracan with an aftermarket twin turbo kit, cosmetically oversized, protruding lights, and 19-year-old. Who is this? Autoblog posted this, and it's 19-year-old creates insane caged Lamborghini Huracan rally car. And I'll share my screen with you real quick.
That thing is cool.
Yeah, isn't that nuts?
Now, my question is that a legitimately structural roll cage, or is it just for looks?
If you're asking me, I would not bet my life on it. The title says 19-year-old creates insane cage Lamborghini Huracan. And I'm no doubt there are some very talented 19-year-olds out there, but I'm not going to bet my life on it, buddy.
Yeah, well, you know what? I would like to never bet my life on a roll cage.
Yeah,
I've had plenty of roll cage cars. I would like to never test them. If I can manage to go all my life without testing a roll cage, I'm good.
Yeah, that's that insurance, man. But at least with a roll cage, you only have to pay for insurance once. But anyways, dude, how do we get on Lamborghinis? Oh,
I don't know.
We're talking about the Maserati engine that you're going to publish.
Yeah.
What else do you got going up on Engine Labs, bro? You just did something on that cool 360, the Mopar 360.
Yeah. And it's cool just because it's kind of like the redheaded stepchild small block, right? I mean, perfect examples. And the first Facebook comment is, "Why would you even touch that?" Like, what you want to get is, and it's like,
dude, those LA motors are they get no love. But one of the most popular articles that we've ever had on Street Muscle is about the 318 Poly, and I know that's a different family of engines, but it's the 360 is born from that.
Well, now let's see if I know my Mopars. That would be an A series, wouldn't it?
That's correct. I believe. And if I'm wrong, don't worry. They'll let us know in the comments. But yes. And then that gave birth to the
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 LA.
LA. Yeah. And I believe that was around mid 60s, late 60s. I want to say.
You know, I wrote an article for Engine Labs, the casting number guide for the Mopar stuff. And I'm not going to lie, that was one of the hardest articles I've ever written because I went into that so dumb on Mopars.
Dude,
it's never been my thing.
It's tough.
And
Scott joked earlier like about Wikipedia, but dude, I mean, a lot of times that's in the modern age, that's where you find that information, lest you go to the library and really dig up some, old manuals and things like that to find out year range and casting numbers. It's tough, dude. It's tough.
I hate to admit this, but I have not been in a library in probably 10 years. I don't even know what the inside of a library would look like these days.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. 10 years ago, YouTube was a year old, right?
Say that again?
2 years. 10 years ago, YouTube was only 2 years old.
That's crazy. That's
like,
crazy.
I mean, so much has happened in the past decade. I mean, I feel like I might walk into a library and it's nothing but computer screens now.
I think a lot of it probably would be, but we take so much for granted, dude. Everything's just right at your fingertips, and that's sometimes a gift and a curse. But it depends on what you're using it for. And I do a lot of research on the internet, dude. It's so much of what we do, and I'm grateful for it. Anyways, speaking about the internet and what's up on there, we just talked about what's going up on Engine Labs and what's going on Street Muscle. So Street Muscle, let's see. Last week we published some good stuff, man. The latest update from my van project is up, part 3, where I talk about how we got rid of some lame 90s stripe graphics and replaced them with pinstripes. We have a really cool feature going up. Actually, Scott and I were talking about like the difference between pro touring and like going that fine line between pro touring and like a full-on race car. Well, there's a really cool Mustang built by a gentleman, and I don't want to get his name wrong. I believe it's Chris Ashton. And he built a car called the Ruffian Mustang. It's very, very cool. It's a 70 Mustang fastback in this like pimento olive green color, which you would think is not very attractive. But when you see it on this car, I promise you will change your mind. It's fantastic. So that feature is going up this week, and I think our audience is really going to love it. And I'll drop the link in the comment section when this airs.
It's funny you mention your van because, I've given you probably more than your fair share of grief about that van. But did I not, over the weekend, send you eBay links to vans?
You did.
Now, granted, they're not vans. They're step vans. And I don't know why I'm so attracted to them. But
wait, let me look at these links. I got to go back and take a look at these because I like all vans, but I feel like maybe I didn't give these.
I feel like they're more trucks, if we're being honest.
Oh, wait.
They're called step vans.
Yeah. Is it like the ones that came on the Corvair chassis?
No. These are larger. A lot of international chassis stuff. Some Dodge, a couple Ford. I think a couple GMC. Like the one that I sent you the first picture of was from the 1975 TV show SWAT.
Oh, that's right. I remember now. Yes.
That was, I believe, a Dodge Metro step van.
Hold on. We got to throw a picture up of this because I want people to know what we're talking about.
I mean, I searched all over eBay and there's all sorts of work truck sites that have these, but nobody has a Dodge Metro. And
wait, these bread box looking things?
Yeah.
And they have a truck version.
No, these.
Yes. Okay. Wait, hold on. I found one that I think you'll like. All right.
Like, I don't know why I want one, but I do.
All right. This is This is the one, dude.
I mean, could you imagine putting like a engine stand in the back of one?
Yeah.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah. Yeah, dude.
Oh yeah.
You know me. Anything with flames, dude. I'm with it.
See that Metro Mite that you had off the left, that gray thing?
Oh yeah.
That's what I want.
Okay.
Right there. It's small enough that I don't have to worry about like taking too wide a turn, because I don't like taking wide turns because I tend to hit things.
You're a Mustang owner.
I have never hit anything in my Mustang.
Hey, knock on wood, bro.
Any of them.
Yeah.
Any accidents I've ever had have been in non-Mustangs.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm grateful for that, and I hope you never do, man. But that's just a little good-natured ribbing.
Yeah, but now that we've gone 15 minutes over
Yeah.
wrap up.
Well, it's all relevant, bro, and I think our audience will be appreciative of it. Again, right before we let you guys go, check out streetmusclemag.com, check out enginelabs.com, check out Strictly Pro Touring on YouTube, and of course, drop us a like and a comment on this video and all of our subsequent videos. We'll catch you next week at 12 noon Pacific time. For now, this has been the RodCAST. Peace out, guys.